all of the things that were coming up along the way, the fear of sleep deprivation, the fear of being in the woods at night, the fear of not knowing what to do as a pacer. I've never done this. Lisa's never done 100 miles. She didn't know what she needed. It was two rookies in the middle of the night in the Tahoe wilderness. You know, it's been months of working on that mental game so that when I showed up to do this, all of that had already been cleared away. When we show up to a race, yes, we want to practice presence, but that's not where we want to begin to practice presence. The true state of presence from which we can live is going to come from that detachment of the identification of the mind. Because as long as we are identified, we have mind identification, body identification as who we are, we are going to have a very, very, very difficult time of living in the present moment to any degree of sustainability in our life, which means for our entire life, we will never be 100% at our potential. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. I am Jess.
I'm Beach.
I am fresh off of the Tahoe Rim Trail 100 as a pacer for my friend Lisa. This body that I live in, this body that I call home, is extremely sleep deprived right now, but Beach and I had planned to record this podcast, particularly on the day that it's going to be launched, because we wanted to catch the experience that I just had. We wanted to catch it fresh. And I would say that we're doing just that. I'm feeling pretty raw. I'm absorbing the experience, and of course can't help but put myself into the experience of what I just saw, me as potentially somebody that's gonna do 100 someday.
I think Mary Knott talked about that too. Like, if you're interested in doing the Ultraman, go volunteer, go be someone's crew, like put yourself in that environment and feel it and see if it aligns with you. I think that's exactly what this experience has served you, because, you know, we've tossed around the idea of that you've done the 25, the 50 miler, like, and you would just assume that what's next is the 100 miler. And so putting yourself in the experience of what it takes for someone who, especially with Lisa, who couldn't be any more real world. Like, she's a mom of 3.
And Lisa's my friend Lisa, who is my friend who I paced, helped pace to earn her first buckle.
But with no coach, right? She's self-trained, but she has guidance. She has peers that help her along, but she's a mom. She's figuring things out. She's putting in long miles, and she's like the every person.
She gives you no excuse, because she shows up and she does that training, and she has a really great mindset. We were talking on the trail, like, I actually can't remember when we met. We can't remember when we met, which is interesting. But I do remember whenever that was, I was thinking, oh, I can run with that girl, because her mindset is she has an ability to kind of roll with things, and I feel stay in that solution energy. And when I'm out on the trail and you're logging long miles, I don't particularly care to surround myself, you know, with low vibe or fear. And a lot of that stuff is very, very common, because the fact is that what we do breaks you down. And when you're broken down, we get to see what's underneath the surface. And so with Lisa, I really got to see that this weekend. And I got to see just the perseverance that this takes. It's a high level of perseverance. 100 miles is a long way to go.
It's sort of like the half Ironman. Like, you can build up to all the races, and the half Ironman would be the top of that tier. And then you go to the double, you go to the full Ironman. It's a completely different beast. Would you say that's the same thing with going up to like a 50K, 50 miler even, and then you bump up to like 100 miles?
100%. So 50K, you're like, well, if I can do a marathon, I can do a 50K. Then you do a 50K and you're like, well, if I can do a 50K, I can do a 50 mile. And then you do the 50 mile and you're like, well, if I can do a 50 mile, I can do a 100K. Because you're talking about increments of less than 20 miles. But then you get 100K, which is 62-ish miles, to 100 miles. That's a big ass jump. There's a lot that goes down in that chunk. Yeah, I would say I'm en route to the 100K. There's no doubt in my mind that I can do that distance. There's no doubt in my mind I could do a 100-mile distance. There's no doubt there. I know I can do it. But it's like going from half Ironman to Ironman. It's not just double. It's so much more. And I think 50 mile to 100 mile, it's not just double. It's so much more.
And the mindset, I would say, the training, obviously you have to do the training. Everybody does the training, but the mindset has to be strong, super strong as you progress in distance. And I want to touch back on solution energy because you mentioned that. So especially in this type of racing, how critical is it for someone to be in solution energy? But first, what is solution energy to you?
Solution energy is essentially shifting into a mind space that is not where the problem exists. So if you're in the problem and you're in that problem energy of, let's just say my foot hurts. Oh my God, my foot hurts. Like, oh God, I should have. So this is problem energy. I should have laid off last week. I shouldn't have trained. I did that big run. I shouldn't have done that. Oh my God, how am I gonna feel in 15 miles? How am I ever gonna finish this? My foot hurts so much right now. That's not solution energy. Solution energy, you gotta break that pattern. Like with any kind of change, shifting, you gotta interrupt the pattern. And so to get out of the problem energy, you've got to have that break. You've got to have the interruption. So whether you're doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 Mel Robbins thing, whether you're just going to taking one full conscious breath, you get a little bit of a gap. And then, okay, this is the situation that it is. Now, what can I do that is going to allow me to move forward? That is going to allow me to focus on something other than the problems, because your solution is never going to be in the problem. The problem and the solution are two totally different energies. So if you can see that all the symptoms of whatever that problem is, that's one category. Your answer isn't there. Your solution's not there. Your forward motion's not there. It's in another mindset. So you got to interrupt that pattern, break the cycle of negativity, essentially, because if you're in the problem, you're just cycling through negativity. And then moving into a place with, okay, here's the situation. How do I move forward? And then that opens up a big space where you can start to entertain all kinds of things that will allow you to keep moving forward. But if you're in the problem, that's not where you're going to find your solution.
And did you experience this with Lisa at all in your 30-mile section that you had? Was it 10 hours? How long did it take you to do the 30 miles?
11 hours. I got to look at my watch. I haven't even plugged it into my computer yet, but it was a little over 11 hours. It took us to do 30 miles. And this was through the night. And when I picked her up at 50, she had not been eating well. Things weren't
so
settling.
That's kind of the problem.
Yeah. So the problem was Lisa, because I'm sure she's going to listen to this. Problem was Lisa, you showed up at 50.
Or let's say the opportunity, Lisa. The opportunity for you was to get some fuel in your body.
When she showed up at 50, I would for the simplicity of describing the situation, she showed up at 50 in a deficit, and she was ready to walk away at 50.
How many hours? So 50 miles back, give us hours. What do you think that was roughly for her?
I think she did about 14 hours, which was spot on. She was really good. She wanted to take the first 50 conservatively, and she's really good at that. She's very good at pacing herself. This is one of the things I love about Lisa, is that she's very good at being in that solution energy, not being in the ego of, well, I'm fitter than that person. I should be going faster than them. Like, she very much sticks to her own race. Now, what's going on inside of her mind, I don't know. She's a human, so she's probably coming up against some egoic impulses. But what I see as somebody who trains with her is that she stays in that energy of moving forward. So what happened was she showed up at 50 and she wanted to be done. And
what did she say? Like, what is it?
I actually didn't know this. Like, later on, as we were going through the night, she told me this, because when she first came in, Sally, who is her other pacer, went and met her at the Stonehenge aid station, which is essentially the start and the finish, right? So here she is at the start and the finish, but she's right in the middle. So it's, it's that fabulous thing that endurance races do many times is they make you pass through the finish, right? We see that at Ironman all the time. Like,
you run by, it's like to lap 2 or to finish. And sometimes if it's a long race like that, 14 hours in, your mind's kind of like, did I already finish?
Or you immediately are like, I just want to be at the finish. I don't want to be going out on lap 2. So she came in at 50 and Sally was there, who was her other pacer, like I said. And I guess she came in, and Sally, also a Marine. So Sally was a Marine. Lisa was a Marine. Lisa's husband's an active Marine, as people know. I was raised by a Marine. So this is pretty good girl power between the three of us. And Sally was like a drill sergeant. And she's definitely like, she said to me that Lisa said something, about, or perhaps Sally picked it up that Lisa was kind of like, I'm done. And so I was like, nope, you're like not even close. Jess is here. She's ready to go. She's going to carry, like she's there for you. Like, get some food in you and get the hell out of here. Get back on the trail. Like, you're not quitting. It wasn't even an option. Like, there was no drama around it. Sally just kind of she put the kibosh on that pretty quick.
That's solution energy.
Yeah. And Sally's got an incredible amount of experience. Every distance, you name it. She's been running since she was in high school, and I believe she's in her 50s. She's pretty hardcore and very, very experienced at the 100-mile distance. So she was the perfect person to do the last 20 miles with Lisa, because I just had to, get her to Sally. And we knew that, and Lisa knew this too, that Sally was going to, Sally said to me, she was like, at one point, she said she looked at Lisa, and Lisa was like, it's so far, and I don't remember this the first time. Like, where's the top? And Sally was like, if I have to like grab you by the pack and drag your ass down this trail, you are getting to the finish. Like, you are not stopping. So she was pretty hardcore. But yeah, apparently she came into 50 and was kind of like, I'm done. So she came to me and she was like, I'm not eating well. And I could feel that there was like an emotional, for lack of a better word, like an emotional weakness. Like, she's like, I'm not eating well. And I was like, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We'll eat. It's fine. Like, we knew we were going into the evening. We knew it was going to be slow. And I just had to adjust, because Sally was saying, like, through the night, like, it's okay if she's kind of like not eating so much, because you'll be moving slower and it'll be cooler. But once you get to like, 68 to 70, like, get her starting to fuel back up again. But essentially what happened was, it was the opposite. She didn't come in fueled. So and she wasn't feeling good. Like, nothing was feeling good for her. So she takes the Mama Chias, like the pouches. So she had one of those, and we started out, and she was not in a good place. She did not feel good. But I let her ride that out, and I just said, hey, listen, you feel like crap right now, but you're going to get to the other side of it. You're going to feel like crap again, but you're like, this is going to pass. So by the time we got to our first aid station at Hobart, she was ready to eat a little bit. We got some Coke in her, and noodles. Noodles was what she wanted. And so we would get some noodle soup, but we would
boiling. Is it warm? Is it hot?
Oh yeah. They have like full on setups. And so I would go up and, well, I can kind of tell you about like how I got her through the aid stations and things like that. But essentially the noodles were good, and that was giving her salt, and that was giving her carbs and things like that. But she came in essentially to 50 in a deficit. So my job was to not only get her to mile 80, but get her out of the deficit and to mile 80 with as much padding as possible to those cutoffs, because I knew that those last 20 miles were going to be tough, because the 30 that I was with her at were tough.
You mean by terrain wise, or just the condition she was in, or a combination of the condition she was in, the being in the dark, the terrain?
It was more of like crossing over to that point where she was going further than she had ever gone. And, we got to a point where she got past the 100K point, and that was the furthest that she had ever gone. And then she was like, okay, I've officially been up for 24 hours. And then we were like, okay, you've officially been moving for 24 hours. So we were hitting all of these milestones. And I would say it wasn't until really the last 8 miles where the fatigue hit her heavy. And it was also because she was still trying to catch up. She was eating consistently, but it wasn't a lot of calories. And then I kind of had to put the hammer down on her a little bit to get some more food in her.
You need fuel. Like you're moving the body, and I just from watching a lot of the videos on YouTube from these race reports, these guys are fueling. Like they're putting calories in and they're fueling quite often. And you can see it. They're going into the aid station, they're filling up all their waters again. They're grabbing snacks and stuff from the back of their packs. So even at the elite level, they're putting in some fuel quite often.
Yeah. And when we got her pack at the 50-mile mark, like Sally said to me, she's like full. Like she's full. She should have come in there empty, right? She should have, whatever. She came in perfectly. So I knew, like, I just knew. So that was the symptom. That was the quote unquote problem, that she hadn't been eating very well for the first 50. And then it was like, okay, what's the solution? Start getting food in her, start getting electrolytes in her. We started having her take salt tabs and getting as much as we could in her. She got over the fact that she wasn't feeling good. Then it was more of like, it was me up against the fatigue and her starting to fade a little bit, like cognitively, and realizing that I couldn't leave it up to her to make decisions on when she was going to eat, when she wasn't. So we would come into the aid stations and I would just sit her in the chair, get her pack, give it to a volunteer, tell them what we needed. I'd get her drop bag, give her the drop bag, and immediately get her food so that she was in the chair with food. It was 10 minutes. So I would give her 10 minutes at these aid stations throughout the night where she could sit for 10 minutes. And the first thing we did was get her food. And then after she was all set and kind of eating, I would go and take care of myself. Because as a pacer, you also need to take care of yourself, because you can't be the one that screws it up. You can't be the one that says, oh my God, I'm not eating well.
And you need the calories. So we work with this with our athletes. If your mind starts to wander in a race, like you're starting to go off into the distance, you're low on calories. You're not focused. Your brain needs fuel, right? So you need those calories. Same thing here. So for you to be aware, for Lisa, you needed to fuel yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, you do a race and it's you. It's you and it's your race and you're responsible. When you pace, it's you and you're responsible, but it's somebody else. And you're responsible for watching them. Because the whole idea behind pacing and why races allow it is for safety. It's for safety of fatigued runners on the trail at night. And I gave her a trail name called Mumble. I was like, your trail name is Mumbles, because I didn't know what she was saying. She was having a really hard time enunciating. She would like tell me these stories. And I'm like, I have no idea what she's saying. So I knew that the brain wasn't getting what it needed. And so I would listen to her, I would watch her, and that was giving me so much information. And so you could potentially say, well, how do you know? What do you mean you're watching her and you know? And that's just going into this. I just knew that in the present moment, I would know exactly what to do. I
think this is a key point for athletes as you're explaining this. The ability to be low in calories, the mind wandering, the mind going by the finish line to go out on that second lap. The default of the mind, the comfort of the mind is going to be, like, I'm already behind in calories. I'm not feeling good. The finish line is right here. Maybe I'll just, chalk it up. This is not my day. I'm just going to like bag it. Things aren't working well. And you can easily...
That's the problem.
But you see the mind can easily just give into that. It's so easy. The mind wants comfort, right? It's going to seek comfort. Where it's at that point I just described is not comfortable. It's in the unknown. So that's why it's so important to be in that solution energy and kick yourself out of that mindset, so you don't continually go down that way. And either you do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or you have a pacer or somebody that can be there for support that moves you towards the goal that you want. Because in that moment, I'm just, putting my opinion in here. I don't know what she was actually experiencing at that point, but in that moment, your body and mind are seeking comfort, but deep down. And if you can tap into that deep down, you want to finish the race. This is what you're there for.
Yeah, I think there was no doubt in her she can see it. She can see, like, I think she came into 50 wanting to bag it, but knowing that she wasn't going to, because there was no way in hell that we were going to let her bag it. Because the thing that one of the first things she said to us was, everything is fine. I'm fine. So we knew it was just mental. So we just had to get her on the trail as soon as possible and get her out of that aid station, get her away from her husband and her kids,
Comfort.
Yeah, all the comfort, the car's right there, like everything. And so we just had to get her out of there, get her some food in her. And like, she was like, should I change my tank? I was like, yep. Just like, what I wanted to do is make her feel as fresh as she possibly could going into the second 50. So she's like, I don't know if I should. So you see this a lot, like there's decision fatigue because she's tired. She's already got 50 miles under her belt. I was like, yeah, change your tank top, 100%. Like, just do that. It's going to make you feel so great. Okay, good. Got that on. Let's go.
Because you're at the aid station waiting for Lisa, probably for an hour or so, maybe longer.
No, not even. It was probably like the timing and the flow was just on point.
Did you see anybody come in? Did you see any runners come in and were having the decision fatigue and actually decided not to continue on? Could you see any of this happening?
Yes. And I was talking to Lisa's husband, Josh, who's a really cool dude. And he was like, this is really interesting. He's like, because he had been there for hours. But he was like, there are people who have been here for 45 minutes, close to an hour. And I feel like the 50-mile aid station is critical because it's the refresh. Right. So it's like, get what you need. And if you're going to change, like, yes, like maybe have a little bit of time. But if you start going over too much time, the body's going to not want to move again. So I feel like it's really critical to get what you need at that 50, perhaps give yourself a little bit more room, but like it's a very fine line.
And there's no time limit for the 50-mile aid station, right? I mean, there's the cutoff.
No, dude, you should see some of the shit we were seeing at the aid station.
I was just thinking about...
People like, oh, there was carnage.
I was thinking about Utah's toughest, and I got to that aid station after the bike, and where most guys are broken down, they were like crying. And that's when I called you, right? And I was broken down. But there was a time limit. I had to be out of that aid station by a certain time. But I could see myself wanting to just be there and debate in my mind, should I go? Should I not go? Maybe I just need one more sip of cola. Maybe I need to just put water. Like, I can see that mindset. So if I didn't have that time frame where they said, you have 5 minutes, you got to get out of here by the time you came in, that sort of pushed me out. But in this experience at the 50-mile mark, it's just the time cutoff, right? So they could be there for an hour or 2 or 3 if they got there early.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, we saw this one guy that we actually headed out on the 50 with him. And within, I don't know, a quarter of a mile, we were all off course. And so then we turned around and we came back. Thank God this guy on a mountain bike was like, you guys are totally going the wrong way. So we headed back out, and he had an energy about him, this gentleman that we were on the trail with, and we weren't on for very long. But I said to Lisa, I'm like, let's just let this guy go. Cause he was complaining about the course markings. And I was like, let's just let this guy go. Like, we don't need to be in his energy. And we saw him at the first aid station, and he was like slumped over in a chair with a blanket over his head. And it was like he looked dead. He looked dead. And then like 3 hours later in the middle of the night, and I knew, cause he had an Iron Man tattoo on his leg. So I remembered him, and he went cruising past us, and he was all like in solution energy. Like, he was all like having a good time. And we were like, dude, you were dead at Hobart. And he's like, I'm alive. And he took off, and then we never saw him again. So I'm assuming he finished, but it's just, it really, you can go to this aid station, stay as long as you want. We knew one guy that was at an aid station for 2 hours, and he ended up finishing in front of Lisa. So you can be at these aid stations for as long as you want. But if you're feeling fine, which for Lisa, like when I would do assessments with her, I would ask her how she's doing, and I would listen. It was more about listening to her tone, listening to like how matter of fact she was about what she was telling me. It was more of like what was between the words that was giving me the information more so than what she was telling me. And so the point was, the whole time she was fine. So there was no reason that she needed to stay at those aid stations longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah, keep it moving. She's so lucky she had you there. You got to get in and out quickly. And the decision fatigue, I think, is a huge thing. I think a lot of people come up upon that without even knowing that they're in decision fatigue. We hear it, but I don't know if you hear it yourself.
And I think having a pacer for 100 miles is actually really smart, so that you've got that person who's cognitively fresh and they can take your words and then make the decisions that are going to be best for you at that point. Because it doesn't matter if you're, an 18-hour 100-miler or a 35-hour 100-miler. Like, you're going to get fatigued, and your brain and your ability to make decisions is going to be compromised.
So at that point, the 30 miles, 11 or so hours that you were with her, did you get a sense from her that she was staying in the moment, or she was looking ahead?
She was looking ahead.
So how am I ever going to get to... Yeah,
and it was more like coming out of fatigue, and like then there was emotion, like, how am I going to do? And obviously, my answer to that. I was like, right. And she was just very quiet a lot of the time. And I was going back and forth of being in front of her and being behind her. And there was times when I was behind her and I was like, she's got more than this, and she needs to be giving more than this right now. And I would say things like, right here, right now, right where you are, no further than that. There was one time where we were coming into Diamond Peak, and I was just seeing this like level of perseverance. I knew that she was in a tough zone for like probably 8 miles. And I was really pushing her, because I wanted to get her to the 80-mile mark with as much padding as possible, because the climb out of Diamond Peak is like insane. I didn't do it, but I heard it was like upwards of like a 40% grade, and the sun was out. It was the morning, so it was going to be hot. And, we came out of the woods, and we were almost to the aid station. She was like, how am I going to do this climb? I'm never going to be able to do this climb. How am I going to finish this? And I just was like, all that is bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, that's just the mind. It's not who you are. You just right here, right now, one step in front of the other, you're going to do this. Like, that's bullshit. Do not buy into that. Do not buy into any of that.
So, man.
And she's like crying, and I'm crying because I'm seeing this like unbelievable amount of strength from this woman, like just incredible. And here she is, like emotional, and I'm just right in her face going like, that's bullshit.
So in those situations, as endurance athletes, why is it so challenging to do the simplest, smallest thing, which is just take that next step? And I know sort of what the answer is because we talked about it, the mind is going into the future, right? It wants to know that it's going to make it up. It's going to want to know that it's going to hit the timeline. It's going to want to know that it can do this. So what is the essence of it? Why can't we all just be present? So here it comes back to presence. We've been big on the presence lately. Wow. So the presence, why can't we just come back to the footstep in this? Why is this moment and present moment so challenging for all of us as endurance athletes?
Because we identify ourselves with the mind. We have mind identification. So as long as we identify ourselves as the mind and the body, we're going to have a lifelong battle with being present. And the mind is always going to have a leg up because we think that those thoughts are who we are. We think, oh, my mind, this is the way my mind works. Oh, my mind. Oh, my anxiety. Oh, my fear of this, my this. So we own all this stuff. We reach out, we take all this stuff that's not helpful, and we make it ours, and we make it a part of our identity. So it boils down to detachment. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am not the thoughts. And that was an embodiment that allowed me to up level on in so many different areas leading into this race. And when I say leading into this race, as opposed to during the experience of this race, it was because all of the things that were coming up along the way, the fear of sleep deprivation, the fear of being in the woods at night, the fear of not knowing what to do as a pacer. I've never done this. Lisa's never done 100 miles. She didn't know what she needed. It was two rookies in the middle of the night in the Tahoe wilderness. It's been months of working on that mental game so that when I showed up to do this, all of that had already been cleared away. When we show up to a race, yes, we want to practice presence, but that's not where we want to begin to practice presence. The true state of presence from which we can live is going to come from that detachment of the identification of the mind. Because as long as we are identified, we have mind identification, body identification as who we are, we are going to have a very, very, very difficult time of living in the present moment to any degree of sustainability in our life, which means for our entire life, we will never be 100% at our potential.
That's pretty deep. That's exactly what I wanted to get from you. I wanted to pull this out because it's the pivotal moment. It's the pivotal moment as athletes where we want to go to the pool. Let's just say we want to go to the pool. We have a set that we're supposed to do. We have expectations of what the times would be. We start the set. We're not hitting the times. We bag it because we're not doing it. We're not achieving what we were supposed to achieve. And then we walk away from it. When the very essence of it is to show up, do the workout, detach from whatever the times are and move forward. So there's no attachment to that one workout. Now we're going to go to whatever's next in our day with no attachment. And with the athlete, what the majority of athletes will say is, well, how can I get better? How can I know I'm getting better if I'm walking away from the very instance of some performance data that's going to tell me I'm doing okay?
The very thing that you just said there, how do I know I'm doing better, shows attachment. Because if I'm not doing better, then I don't want to do this anymore. That's attachment to the fruits of your work. So I had posted this, oh God, I just opened right up to it. Perfect. From the Bhagavad Gita. I actually posted this on my Instagram page. I love this so much. And I think every athlete should really listen to this and let it soak in, perhaps even write it down. You could probably Google this part of it. It's from chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the practice of meditation. And it's, this is Krishna talking to Arjuna, and Arjuna is the one who's in the battle of the mind. And he says, "It is not those who lack energy or refrain from action, but those who work without expectation of reward who attain the goal of meditation." Then he goes on to say, "Those who cannot renounce attachment to the results of their work are far from the path." And that's exactly what I was saying. As long as we identify ourselves as the mind, the body, and the thoughts, we are always going to be far from the path of our evolution, like our spiritual evolution, I should say. It goes on to say, where is it? Well, if I can find it, I'll read it.
This is so good because as these races and experiences are put forth and presented to us, there are opportunities for us to explore using these techniques, I guess you could say, these spiritual learnings or just these overall challenges of noticing what our thoughts are and belief systems are. So these races are experiences for us to go out and challenge that. So if we backtrack to why you actually had hesitation to becoming a pacer at a race at night, like if we backtrack to this back in, and I put it in our Instagram post back in the years that we were at the 2000s, we were in Boulder and you didn't run trails. Why didn't you tell everyone why you didn't run trails?
Because I wasn't meditating.
But what else? Obviously.
So I know that the source now is because I wasn't meditating, because the trails called me and I knew about trail running and I knew about ultra runners at that point, but I was scared. I was so scared. I was scared of mountain lions. 100%. I was scared of mountain lions. I was scared of being ripped apart by a mountain lion. I mean, that's it. Like, if sure, I could come up with a couple other reasons, but that was it, 100%. So that tells me that I've got mountain lion karma in my DNA from some other situation in my life, because I can tell you that I actually can feel the terror and the trauma of that happening. So it must have happened at some point. And because anything we feel, like those fears and things like that, those are deep, deep wounds, like deep grooves on our soul. So if we look at it from the spiritual standpoint, there's some samskaras, but also all this karma and everything is in our DNA, and it's from our ancestors. You know, big thing about our generation is that we're coming from parents whose parents were in the Great Depression. So a big part of our generation is healing financial karma, not living in a state of lack anymore. So I know now that was something I needed to get to the other side of, but I didn't wait until being there this weekend to get to the other side of it. I got to the other side of it.
Back to your point about doing the prep work, doing the work before you even get to the race.
Yeah, it's like prehabbing, right? It's like prehabbing. Before you go into a surgery, get yourself as strong as possible before you go into that surgery so you can come out the other side even stronger. That I wasn't mussing up my experience this weekend by trying to get to the other side of fear. I was already on the other side of fear. So the thing is that just like how we say that race day is celebration day, this was like this mental and spiritual celebration experience, because being out there, like, I just want to get out there again in the middle of the night. Like, who wants me to pace them in the middle of the night? Like, I'm your girl. I absolutely loved it. And I know we've got a question on that. But essentially, yeah, I was really, really fearful. And we lived in Boulder for 10 years. And the fear was not just about the trails. I had a lot of fear in my life. And then I started meditating and starting to understand that those fears were not who I was, that those thoughts were not who I was, that the mind was not who I was, and that the body is not who I am. And that I am something else. I am that energy that created the mountain lion. That's who I am. And then I always aspire to be like the story of Daniel in the lion's den. You know, so Daniel's in the lion's den, and the lions can't attack him because he's peace. He's peace. Now, if he had fear in him, if he had violence in him, then they would have attacked him. So I learned that a long time ago, that if I allow the layers of fear and judgment and jealousy, all these really low vibrational things to fall away, that what's left is just peace. And if I'm peace, then I'm at peace no matter what. And a lion who's angry and hungry is not going to go after peace, because that peace is the peace of who they truly are too. So I was too scared to get on the trails in Boulder. And I really knew about that. And then moved to Newport. And there was a part of me that I moved to Newport, was kind of wiped the sweat off my brow. Like, oh, good, now I don't have to deal with that fear. But that was also a part of my life that I've talked about before, where every time I got in the car, I thought I was going to be killed. So the fear just translates. It doesn't matter. You can't avoid it. If you see the fear down an aisle in the supermarket, you can't go down the next aisle and think that you're not going to have to face that fear. And so over the years, healing the fear by communing with who I truly am every day. And then those layers just fall away. So when I found out that Lisa got into the race, I had an immediate hit that I wanted to support her, that I needed to support her. And it was all these little mini steps along the way, sending the text, hey, do you need a pacer? Right? Like that took getting to the other side.
How did you debate it at all, whether you should send the text or not, or wait till Lisa contacts you? Or, because I remember you might have said once to me, like, I wish Lisa would ask me to pace her.
Yeah. So that I don't have to stand up.
Right.
I don't have to stand up and do it.
Did you have any of that? Like,
right?
debating?
Because it's always easier to be a victim.
Right.
Right. And that would have been like, oh, well, she asked me to do it, so I've got to do it. But I took the initiative, and then there was, yes. So
what's the worst that could happen? She says no. So what?
Well, the worst at that point was that she was going to say yes.
Well, I'm just saying, for the normal people out there that are like, you know, they would get the they'd get the no, and they'd feel like they're not worthy enough.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. But so there was all these little steps along the way. And this is why present moment awareness is so important, because so you've probably heard this before, like every moment is for you, and there's learning in every moment. And there's not one moment that's more important than another. So I had the note, it came in meditation, that I was to be in service of her. Now, there's nothing I can do to take that away. Like, I knew that I was supposed to do this. So now I could have not acted on it, but I acted on it because I'm in tune with the fact that intuitive voice that's who's running my life. And so, sending the text, and then in between sending the text and her getting back to me was like, well, maybe she will say no. Like, that would be cool. Then maybe you don't need to be in service of her, and you don't need to do this right now. And so I just watched all that. It doesn't mean that those thoughts don't come up. I just watch them. And then of course she came right back like, oh my God, thank you so much. That would be amazing. And then I was like, okay. So then there's all these little steps, right? So then I knew that there was a 30-mile section. There's a 20-mile section. And then a little bit of runner unworthiness, thinking like, well, maybe she'll just have me do the 20 because I'm not that great of a runner, right? Again, little thoughts coming in. And she said, do you have any preference, 30 or 20? And I wasn't going to let the mind decide that. So I said, you feel into it. And you let us know, because she had us kind of on a whole crew email. So she had decided I was going to do the 30, which was going to be through the night. And I was like, that is so perfect. So it was about noticing any kind of sensation that came up along the way and not indulging it, being like, okay, there it is. Awesome. Another opportunity to rid myself of that consciousness. Because that's all you have to do, right? If you don't want a mosquito biting you, rid yourself of mosquito consciousness, and that mosquito will never bite you. I did not get one mosquito bite that entire experience, and people were getting eaten alive. Because guess what? They were like, these mosquitoes, I'm getting eaten alive. I just got bit again. And in my head, I was like, I have rid myself of mosquito consciousness, and I didn't get bit, and I didn't have bug spray on. And at one point I actually had to sit on the side of the trail because I had to tend to an opportunity that was happening in my foot. And there was mosquitoes swarming me, and I watched them. They like landed on me, and I didn't swat them away. I just said, I have no mosquito consciousness, and they flew away, and I never got bit. So it was these little steps along the way, paying attention on purpose so that I can see like, oh yeah, there's another little spark of fear. Okay, good. Heal that. How? Practice being calm. Realize that those thoughts are not true, that there's nothing to fear. And as we always say, what was the worst that was going to happen? I was going to die out there. That's the ultimate detachment.
So what separates you from everybody else? Because you're having the same thoughts that everybody else has, right? Yeah, everybody else has fear, doubt, anger, anxiety, unworthiness. Everybody has the same thing, but what you've done is you've basically, and I like to use this analogy, you just rooted your feet in the sand on the beach. Like you're just like rooting them down, and you're standing up to those thoughts of anxiety, fear, doubt, unworthiness. You're standing up to them and just noticing them, not indulging in them.
Well, I know I have embodied on a cellular level that they are not me.
Right. But whereas the normal person would be like, that is who I am. And they actually like will vocally say that to us. We've heard like, I'm one who just gets fearful of like they've embraced and embodied whatever that word is and the meaning of that word. And that has become them. But what you've done is you've noticed that she chooses fear. Fear has come up. You've noticed it. Yeah, you've had feelings of fear. You've embraced that before. But what you're doing now is you're noticing it and choosing not to have that define who you are. You're noticing it and remaining calm and moving through it.
I remember one time when I was talking about Ironman Lake Placid to Meditator Bob, and I said, oh, I just love the race. And I'm so drawn to the mountains. And, I think I was going for my second time there. And I said, oh God, that just like draws me back. And how romantic you want to make that, right? Like, I love the mountains. Like, Lake Placid calls me back. I love that course. I love what a monster the bike is. I love how hard that course is. And I remember Bob just said to me, he said, well, wherever you should continue to follow that, because whatever calls you, you have karma to work out. And that was the year where there was the crazy storms and I was on the descent, and I just was like okay with dying. Like, I was okay with dying because if it was one of those situations where I was either going to get down to Keene safely or I was going to crash because I didn't have brakes and I was freezing. My feet were coming unclipped. It was crazy. And I was completely peaceful. I was well into my practice at that point, but I always think about that. So obviously the Tahoe thing, it was calling me. I had karma to work out. So, you know, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't believe in karma, that's fine. You can say that all you want. It's the law of cause and effect. That's all I'm talking about. It's just the law of cause and effect. So I knew that I had some things to work out in Tahoe, and what it was the whole experience leading up to Tahoe. And then actually when I showed up to Tahoe, as I shared with you, I actually didn't feel that great for those 30 miles. I had some interesting things showing up, but anyway,
it's the very reason why you had to go there.
It's not dramatic anymore. It's really nice. And that doesn't mean that I don't feel joy. And that doesn't mean that my life is boring. It's just that there's the mind wants everything to be dramatic. And, what I realized is that there's this really expansive life on the other side of drama. And I'd much rather hang out there.
Because you could have come back from the race being like, there's no way I'm ever going to run on this course again, ever, because of the way that you felt, right? You could have gotten caught up in the way that your body felt during those 30 miles, right? And disregarded the beauty of Tahoe and the community and the race organization and the opportunity to be outdoors in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And that's what you chose instead, versus driving into this fearful injury. I wouldn't say injury, but the experience you had where you had a lot of sensation, right? And you can dwell on that, which is just going to create more sensation for the next experience that you have.
But I just look at it as, okay, cool. Everything that's coming up is the whole reason why I'm here.
Opportunity.
There's no mistakes. Like, so I was having pain in my right, like on the lateral side of my Achilles the entire time. I have never felt anything there. And I was like, oh, this is perfect, because whatever it is that I'm here to work out, that's the energy that's showing up right now. Now, if I didn't ever come here to Tahoe, like in this moment, then whatever that unique energy and that perfect alignment was that I'm supposed to work out right now, I wouldn't have been able to have that opportunity to work it out. So I came out of this experience more purified than going into it, because now I can't remember ever showing up. We'll call it a race. Like we'll say that I kind of treated this as a race. I can't recall showing up to a race except for the time when I took a typhoid vaccine 2 days before doing a half Ironman, where I haven't felt good. I mean, I always feel amazing. I always have reported that this is past, this is historical information, right? That the little niggles, they never show up on race day. And this weekend, every niggle showed up, and then new things. And it was like my entire body was just being poked and prodded by the universe the whole night. And it was fine. It was completely not dramatic. It just, again, I'm not the body. So when you embody that on a cellular level, it makes navigating these things so much easier.
Yeah, you have a choice.
Yeah.
Back to the choices.
All right. Should we dive into Amy's question about this?
Question, yeah.
Hey, I have a question for you though, as I pull this up. What was your experience about seeing me move into this and move through it and all of that? What were you watching?
I guess you could call it flow. Just seeing you notice the challenges or notice the opportunities, and then just moving calmly to the next thing. And I'm not going to say doubts. You would have questions.
Moments of intensity.
Yeah. And you would which we all do. I mean, how many conversations have you and I had here where we're like, one thing will come up, we have the conversation, and then all of a sudden it just disappears because we're not attached to it. Like, here it is. This is the problem or thing that's coming up, and then it's quickly gone. And so when even training, all leading up through it, when you are having challenges, like, I just don't feel like I just need to get to the pool today. Running wasn't an option.
Yeah, this stuff started to show up like about a month ago. And like for 3 weeks, I wasn't feeling good. And then I remember the week before I went to Tahoe, I put in my notes, like, I'm back. And that was really short-lived. And again, this is all energetic alignment. So everything that's showing up in my body it's just energy. And it was aligned with this experience. And so I had an opportunity to rid myself of that energy or expand that energy and then have to go work it out later. So I definitely worked out a lot of stuff leading into it. But during 4th of July, when my brother and sister were here and, hanging out with them and everything, and, I love them dearly, but listening to, just this, some of it like mindless chatter. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean, let's face it, people, a lot of our conversations are just mindless chatter, right? Like talking about the past and talking about other people and things like that. And in the midst of it, I'm getting course updates about snow fields and 5-foot drifts. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be navigating this stuff in the middle of the night. But it was funny because I would notice that. But then the truest part of me was just receiving all the information. It's just information. It was just, and you know what? I went through those snow fields. They were fine. They were so minimal. And they served the runners really well because during the day they were packing their buffs with snow because it got hot during the day. So I was getting all this information along the way, and it was really cool just to watch that it just was coming in as information. And at first, when you first start doing this work, it's going to come in as fear, and it's going to come in as all those things that are the very reason why you're walking this path. But then as you continue to walk the path and the layers fall away, you just start to realize that everything is information, and there's not good information or bad information or scary information or helpful information. It's just information. And then once it goes through the filter of the mind, that's where the meaning comes in.
And when that information comes in and we put the brakes on, that's where most people just stop. Right. So it's continually going. So you saw all these signs and you saw these potential obstacles, but you just kept moving forward. And I don't think that can be overstated, is you must keep moving. It's a must to keep moving forward no matter what's happening. So the filter, this is so great. I love that. The filter that's going on in your mind, if you're thinking about and reinforcing the thoughts of, these walls are there and I'm supposed to stop and I need to turn around because it's getting uncomfortable, versus this obstacle, this wall is there. I need to find a way to get around it and to get over it because there's going to be another wall. And guess what? There's going to be another wall, and you're going to continue to go until there's finally no more walls, or if there's ever such a thing. But it's that filter system. So if your filter is not a high-end filter, let's just say, not a top quality filter, then you're constantly going to stop and put the brakes on. And you're going to wonder why is it that it's been 15 years since I've said I wanted to do this, but I have not done it yet? And you can pinpoint that to your filter system. If you want to change it. Interrupt the process. Somehow interrupt the process. And what I noticed from you, because now it's just automatic for you. It's just, here's the obstacle, here's the wall, I'm just going to walk around it. And then another wall comes up and you're like, well, this time I'm going to go right through it. And then another wall will come up and be like, well, I think I'm going to do 2 jumps over it and find the other side. Like, there's always a way over, and you just navigate it calmly and with perspective of something that aligns with who you are internally. Like, you've done the work to align yourself, so no matter what is out there challenging, you can still make it through. Because at the very essence, it's aligned with you. When you're in alignment, there's nothing that can pull your drive or path to that final destination.
Yeah, and the wall, I love the wall visual, because I feel like my walls now are just so see-through. I'm like, it's a
transparent walls.
They're just transparent. And, everything we take in through the senses, the smelling, the touching, the seeing, the hearing, everything that we take in through the senses goes through the filter of our mind. The filter of our mind is every experience we have ever had in this life and other lives. So it's like, if we are taking these thoughts as truth, we are living through the viewfinder of all of our past experiences, and there's nothing new there. So what I love is the unknown, right? Go. What are you going to say?
Because it's an opportunity. The unknown is actually opportunity.
So when a thought comes in, when I look out at the ocean and I say, oh, the ocean's beautiful, it seems like an instantaneous, that observation is going through this filter of the mind, which holds every experience I have ever had in this lifetime and other lifetimes. The only place that doesn't exist is when we're present. Because when we're present, we're just in experience. It's important to know too, just like the blood uses the heart as its organ, right, to pump, the ego uses the mind. The mind is the organ for the ego. So you're putting it through this filter, and it's this filter that the ego uses, and the ego is all about keeping us safe and small. So anyway, that's another reason why presence is so important, because presence is what's going to allow us to move into the unknown without all the dramatics of the mind and without the big trailer of our past following behind us. And one of the things that came in very clear to me was that we have the known, right? The known, and then the unknown. And the mind and the ego love the known, but it's just the known. You're just looking at what is known. Even science is like, it's just the known. Like, I love science because it helps me as a practitioner of meditation and teaching it. It helps me to assist people in buying into their investment of meditation. But if we really are to look at science, it's just the known.
Which is almost limiting.
It's 100% limiting, but it makes the mind feel good. So there's the known and the unknown. And the unknown is what the mind doesn't like. All that uncertainty, right? And then what happens is we start thinking about the unknown, and we're thinking about the unknown through the filter of our mind, and we're projecting all of our past fears and everything onto this future experience, which is unknown. And what I was realizing and observing through observing my own human condition and the way that the ego works was that we want to just jump to the other side of the unknown. Like, oh, I just want to get to the other side of this presentation I'm doing at work because I've never done it before, and I'm doing it in front of the board of directors, and I'm so nervous. I just want to get to the other side. But what happens is we're missing this very rich experience between the known and the unknown. And I love that. And I found myself the week leading up to Tahoe, like really slowing down, because I was like, I love this part because I am right before the unknown becomes the known. And once it becomes the known, it's safe. It's not that exciting anymore. The unknown is so exciting. And I just didn't want to slow down that process. And that has everything to do with just being present. So the Wednesday before leaving for Tahoe, I was just in the Wednesday. I wasn't on the mountaintop yet, because I knew that precious time was closing in. And now it's known. It's like I said, anybody want me to pace them? Like, I'll pace you, right? Like I'll go back into the dark anytime. No, like I love it because it's known now. So we miss this really rich time in our life between the known and the unknown. And when I say rich, life is a very rich itinerary, and that richness includes everything, intensity of all the different feels.
And you say a lot, wishing for another now. wishing.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Fast
way to
forward
live.
into the future when you can just soak up exactly where you are right now. Like having this conversation with you, with our dog, with his head under the bed somehow.
God, it looks like he's been decapitated. Where's his head? Oh my God.
It's just
there it is.
Loving this experience right now, being right here, right now, not the stuff that we need to do later on today, the stuff that happened last night, the lack of sleep. It's just right now we're having this conversation.
And without the paying attention to the present moment and without wishing for another now, without wishing to be on the other side of the unknown, if I hadn't done that, I would have missed all of that preparation that allowed me to show up fearless. And I was fearless a month prior. Like I had already gotten to the other side of it.
You know, it'd be really great if we got Lisa's perspective on having her pacers.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. All right, let's we said we were going to do this question, so let's jump into that.
All right, so I used to run in the early morning, dark in Georgia, but never on a trail. What did it feel like? So what did running on a trail at night feel like? Was it like being suspended in the universe? Did you just have to trust your footing? I mean, I know you use a headlight, but you become this floating firefly. What was it like?
I love the way that she put this. Was it like being suspended in the universe? And when I read that, I just remembered being on this section after you leave. So if you're familiar with the Tahoe course, then you know what I'm going to be talking about. You leave Hobart aid station and you're heading to Tunnel Creek, and this is the first time you hit the ridge line. So like when we leave Hobart, we put on our Houdini jackets, which by the way is the Patagonia Houdini jacket, best jacket ever made in the world.
What makes it so good?
It is feather light. It's like super lightweight and it keeps you so warm. I have no idea what they've done with this thing. It's not Gore-Tex. It's just a windbreaker. It's water resistant. It's not waterproof, but it's just the best thing. And it's so lightweight and you don't even realize you have it on. And then you can just kind of pack it up and throw it in one of your stuff pockets. But we put on our jackets and we headed up to the ridge line, and Lisa was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You can't see the view, and Tahoe's right there." And we're up on this ridge, and I turned around and I saw this, it was this red. It was like this, I was like, what is that? And I could see because the night was really starting to become itself. And you could start to see the outline of the peaks. And I was like, what is that? And I thought it was bright red. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's the moon. So we stopped. And this is one thing Sally kept telling me. She's like, you get up on those ridge lines, you shut your lamp off. Just shut your lamp off and take it all in. She's like, make time for that. That's so important. I mean, and this is a woman that's like, she was like, beware the chair, no more than 10 minutes. Like she was like, gotta keep her moving, like boom, 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 boom. And this was one thing she was so adamant about was like, stop, turn your lamp off and just take it in. So I'm looking and Lisa's behind me. I was like, oh my God, I think that's the moon. And we stopped and we turned our headlamps off and we're on this ridge line and the breeze is coming through and I can't see anything, but I know Lake Tahoe is to my right. And I felt like a speck. In that moment, I felt how huge the earth is. I felt how huge the universe is. And I felt how tiny I was. But at the same time, that expanse was me. It was pretty epic. And I felt like I could have taken off the side of that ridge and flown.
Wow. I don't know what to say.
It was one of the most
we're all just
peaceful moments.
Captivated, yeah, by your ability to recall such detail and presence in that experience in the middle of the night. Like to feel that.
It was amazing. And the time was going by so fast. And I even had a thought, so we talked about wishing like wishing to always like kind of get to the other side of something. There was a part of me that was like, no, slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. And that's still the mind too, right? Like I want more. And, but what you're soaking in a moment is plenty, and just stay in that moment, and you'll never need more, and you'll never wish for less. But that moment was like, I can feel the breeze right now. And it was like this, there were these flowers that were like these white flowers. And it was like they were glowing. It was just, the whole world came alive in a way I've never seen it before. And I felt my relationship to the earth and the truth of that I'm just a guest.
Amazing. All right. And then follow up on that question. Did you have to just trust your footing? I mean, I know you use a headlamp, but you become this floating firefly. What was it like? So yeah, what was your footing like at night? Because we didn't do much night running in the training.
So I've done a little bit of night running over the last couple, or I should say early morning running before the sun rises. And I remember the first time I went out with Izzy from Ultra Buds, and they're all kind of like, you know, you kind of show up to these things and you're like, everybody else is like, seems calm. And I'm like, holy shit, I've never run in the dark. And like, what's that going to be like? And I remember we were at Lake Hodges, and I was running, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, like, please let me stay upright, because the depth perception was like, it was almost like, you know, when you're going up a stair and you miss a step, or you like think the step is sooner than it. So that was basically how that whole experience was. It was really messy. And then leading into this race, I knew that I needed to up level my headlamp. So, basically I didn't have to, I'm always trusting my footing, but this headlamp took all that depth perception and all the, quote unquote difficulty of night running completely out of the equation. And you ran actually with me under the guidance of that light. And as you know, like it was totally fine. Like we could, Lisa and I leading into this, like we had lots of conversations about lumens, and our intention was to light up the night. We were going to light up the night. And so she got this 800 lumen, Kogala, Kogalla. It's a waist light. I saw a couple other people out there. And then I got the Petzl Now Plus. That thing rocks. I had that on my head for 11 hours. I had worn it for like a half an hour on that run that you and I did. And it just, there was no problem. So basically you get yourself a kick-ass headlamp and you're good to go.
The thing with running with someone that has a headlamp and you don't, when they look away, the light is soon gone and you're in the dark. So that's actually why a waist belt would actually be better, is because your waist is always looking forward, even though you can look left to right, especially if, there's beautiful scenes like in Tahoe. But when you turn your head, when we were running at Bataquitos the other night and you turned your head, I couldn't see anything. Yeah. Because I had this like little ditzy like headlamp, which would just allow me to see the fingers in front of my face. Yeah,
I was on a training run on July 4th, so I still hadn't figured out my headlamp thing. Wasn't spending too much time. I knew I would get the answer when I needed it. And I was running with this guy who I'd never met before. And I asked him, I knew he had done the San Diego 100. So obviously he had a headlamp. And I said, hey, what are you using for a headlamp? And the guy was just like, hold on. He like pulls it out of his pack. Like we're in the middle of the day. He's like, I don't go anywhere without this thing. It's amazing. It's the Petzl Now, blah, blah, blah. Get yourself the extra battery. Just do it. I just knew what he was telling me was what I needed to do. I didn't research. I didn't, whatever. I read some reviews on the Petzl, and every review was just like, yeah, it's amazing. It's our favorite. It's a top light and blah, blah, blah. So, so she has the waist belt on and we're running down Red House Loop, and this guy comes up and he's like, is that a construction light? It was just so bright. I was like, is this overkill? Like the two of us, but it wasn't. It was perfect. And it took everything was off the table. It was like running in the daytime. The funny thing about running at night is that you really don't think about, I really wasn't thinking about anything except for what I was seeing, right? I wasn't you feel really small. And then as first light started to come and the light starts to come up and you're like, kind of need your headlamp, but you kind of don't need your headlamp, but you can see how you're in this huge wilderness, and you start to like, now all of a sudden you're looking around. You're like, what was that? What was that? Who's over there? Oh my God, look at those boulders. That's like mountain lion country, you know, and you're just kind of looking around. You're like, wow, at night, you just don't think about it. I didn't think about it. Like, it was just kind of, we were just cruising. And yeah, you hear things, but we had a bear bell with us. But we saw some super fresh bear scat, and but bears are vegetarians. And really the only thing we had to be, you know, on the lookout for was if we got in between mama and her cubs. And then the mountain lion situation, they've got mountain lions there, of course. But, you know, we were talking and making noise, and we were actually like, there was times where it was just her and I remember like, I was like, God, there's just no one around us. You're just in the middle of nowhere. And then there was times where we were like in packs of 6, you know, you could see people up above, you could see people behind you and everything. So, yeah, you know, I'm always trusting my footing, but the headlamp was amazing.
All right, last question. How does one train for a race that takes you all throughout the night? And as a pacer starting at that time of the day, what was coming up for you in prep for this? And also, I think just briefly touch upon the nutrition, because it was a little twist on it, because it wasn't your normal 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. race. It was actually 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. whenever you started. So what was the twist on that?
Well, I think you and I were really kind of just winging it, right? Like, it's the unknown. I don't know how to, I don't know what the perfect nutrition is leading up to a race that I'm starting at 8:00 at night. So we basically took what we would normally do pre-race. I cut out the fiber, and we just kind of backed it up, pretending that 8 a.m. was 8 p.m., right? Well, that was kind of our plan going into it. And I brought my food with me, so I had everything I needed in the hotel. But then what hit me was like around 5:00, we had planned that I was going to have the pre-race meal of the applesauce and everything. But what hit me in that moment was, wait a minute. Usually I've got, 7 or 8 hours where I'm not eating because I'm sleeping. But I had been eating. Had pancakes in the morning. I was eating pretzels and fig Newtons. So I was loading myself, even though I was weaning off. I was still loading myself all day. So when 5:00 came and I made that applesauce thing, I think I called you from the hotel and I was like, I had maybe 5 bites of it. I don't want it. Like, I don't want it. I'm too full. And so you're going into this with food in your belly. So we were figuring it out, and I was okay with figuring it out, because what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to feel like crap. So what? Okay, so that's the problem. You put that over there and you stay in the solution, which is I'm fine right now. So what did happen was, I will tell you that the first 13 miles, I didn't actually feel good. I had this really weird, I've never felt this before. It was like from my low belly all the way up to like my heart. It just felt like there was this rod that was creating a lot of pressure through my digestive tract. And I was like I said, like, there's just stuff that was showing up, which was obviously perfect alignment for what I was supposed to get to the other side of. So thank God I did all that prep, all that karmic healing leading up to it, because I had a handful of stuff during the race. And if Lisa's listening to this, she's going to be like, oh my God, I had no idea. And because she's such a love, she's probably going to feel bad. So don't feel bad, Lisa. When you asked me how I was doing and I said I was fabulous, I was fabulous. And I was like, so the problem was I was feeling this, like almost like this really long, kind of horrible cramp up the center of my body. So that was the problem, right? The solution energy was, oh, this is amazing, because whatever this is, as long as I don't feed it, like, it's going to fade away. It's going to be fine. And it's also keeping my posture on point, because it really was requiring me to stand up very straight. So it was keeping my posture really well. And I was grateful for it, because I knew that it was some kind of energy that I could get to the other side of. And it was me learning about what happens when you start a race at 8:00 at night on that particular night. Now, that doesn't mean that every time I do a race at 8:00 at night, that's how it's going to feel. And then I remember looking at my watch. It was like 12.86 miles. I looked at my watch because all of a sudden I felt better. And I looked at my watch and I was like, okay, almost 13 miles. I've been feeling like crap. And it was gone. And then after that, I was totally fine. So I was totally fine the whole time. But to answer this question, like for us, it was kind of an unknown. And I think that I'll look back on this for the next time I do something like this and maybe back out the food, have more of a afternoon of fasting, and then be prepared to take in the pre-race meal. So if I was going to look back, I wouldn't have been resting in the bed eating pretzels and stuff all day. I would probably have had a huge breakfast and then fasted and then had the big applesauce situation. I think that probably would work well next time. And then as far as pacing and starting for that, I love this question, what was coming up for you? One thing that has been deeply rooted in my life is this fear of being tired. I mean, I can tell you that when I was in high school, I remember being in a full-on like hyperventilation panic attack if it was after 9:00 and I hadn't slept yet. I don't know, again, don't really need to know why. I have had a lot of panic about not having rest. So at some point I was massively sleep deprived and tortured or something, and came into this life with this really fear around sleep. And I've said it on the podcast before, like I guard my sleep, with my life. This gave me a chance to get to the other side of that because it was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so tired. What if I fall asleep on my feet? I'm not going to be able to be there for her. And I was like, okay, all of those things are untrue. And the only thing I'm going to know is what's known in that moment. And I know that I've got everything I need to navigate that. So along the way, I would recognize the fear of being sleep deprived and when am I going to get sleep and should I nap before? And I would just notice those thoughts and not entertain them. And I interrupted my sleep patterns by going out for a couple of night runs and kind of just saying, okay, body, like we're going to do this and we're just going to run at 8:00 at night and it's going to be fine. And the thing is like, I didn't feel like I needed to do a lot of that because it was really no big deal. So I feel like I healed that part of me right? So I'm not the body. So I don't need sleep. So there was like this tether that I still had of identification with the body. Now the body needs sleep. The body that I'm living in right now needs rest. The body that I live in right now is very sleep deprived, but I'm not the body. So I got a really incredible chance to take that deeper leading up to this. And the fact is that I felt really good all night. And I even yesterday came back to the hotel, took a shower, slept for an hour and went back out and went to the finish line and everything. And then didn't get home until 1 this morning, but I was fine. Like in prior years, that would have panicked me, not having the sleep. So I don't know what that's about. That might sound silly to people, but that has been a really, really big thing in my life is to get to the other side of this sleep that I feel like I need or that the body needs.
Or attached to.
Yeah, attached to it. Like just panic about not getting 8 hours. And all that does is create fatigue. So yeah, I interrupted the pattern a couple nights, went out for some night runs, and it was interesting because it felt like how when you're tapering, you're like, oh my God, I'm like a caged lion, like I'm ready to go. Well, that day, Saturday, was like the longest day of my life. I was like, oh my God, like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And just allowing that energy to stay inside, not expend it, just let it build. And when I showed up at 8:00, or 7:30 or so, I met her around 8. I think we left mile 50 at 8. I was so ready to go. And I never felt tired. I never thought about sleep. There was no problem whatsoever. It was, it was awesome. So we didn't do a lot of that at all.
But also don't let the mind get entertained by it. It's just navigate it as you would as everything else in the moment, right? I mean, you got to do your due diligence. You're fit and strong and healthy and hydrated and focused and mindfully there. So yeah, you will show up and you will be successful. It's just the mind that wants to get involved and say, we need to overcomplicate this a little bit to make sure that you're successful.
Right. And remember, that's basing everything on the known.
Right. So past experience or what other people are posting on social media, or you can get into the blogs about ultra running and just cloud the mind. But just keep, the one thing you can always trust is yourself and deep inside. And if you've tapped into that and understand that, then it doesn't matter where you are. You know, I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I've done it on a podcast, but you could insert me in anywhere. You can put me in Detroit. You could put me in the middle of Missouri, in the Ozarks. You could put me anywhere, as long as I'm confident in myself, I'm going to be okay. I'm okay. So the same thing with any event or race that you have, as long as you've done the work, have confidence that you're okay. You will be okay. When it all comes down to it, when you're out there alone or pacing someone, it doesn't matter what your Strava account says. It doesn't matter what the book that you read 2 months ago about training. It doesn't matter. What matters is you in that moment and your relationship to your thoughts.
Yeah. And you said like tapping into that, what's deep inside. And that's what's key. If you're not tapping into what's deep inside, that internal guidance is going to be lost on you. And the thing is that when you tap into what's deep inside of you, it will 100% bring you right up to your fears. But you know, as Yogananda's teacher, Yukteswar, told him, like, he told him when he started working with him, he told him these 3 stories. And one of the stories was about fear. And the moral of the story was, walk up to your fears and they will cease to trouble you. And so that's exactly, I think, the end result of this whole experience was that it wasn't just the fear of being torn apart by a mountain lion, like the fear of the dark. As a child, I was petrified of the dark. I used to wake up and if my room was dark, I would be in a panic attack as a kid, like sweating. So I was able to get to the other side of these things that had been with me from a very early age, but I was ready for them now. And I think I said to you, like, if somebody asked me to do this 10 years ago, which actually they did when we were in Boulder, remember I was going to pace our friend Sean at Leadville. Of course I was going to do it, but I was petrified. And there was a big part of me that was praying that I wasn't going to have to do it. And he actually dropped at 50 and I never had to do it. So I would have shown up, but I would have shown up in fear and I would have used my will to get through it. This time I have spent years learning about why I'm here and how to live in that state of freedom and walk this earth without fear, so that when I showed up, I was able to show up 100%. Because 10 years ago with our buddy Sean, I was not showing up 100% at all.
Awesome. Congratulations. Really, it's to Lisa, because
congratulations.
The end of all this,
Lisa.
She finished.
Yeah.
But also for you, for facing your fears and getting out there and just standing rooted in your steadfastness and challenging who you are and what your thoughts and belief systems are to come out the other side as a stronger human being, that you can help everyone that you interact with up-level their lives. It's a chain effect. It's the ripple effect. So thank you for everything that you're doing on yourself. And
we all have our things, right? Whether you're afraid of heights, you're afraid to ride a bike, you're afraid to swim in the ocean, whatever it is. Like, I had 2 of the biggest things, the fear of being sleep deprived and the fear of being, killed in the wilderness at night. I had both of those things show up. And when you deepen that communion with that part of you that's unshakable, you're able to show up in an unshakable way. And I felt like I was able to show up in that way for Lisa. So
all you listeners out there, find out what it is that's scaring you.
Maybe I think we already know. I think they already know.
Fears and doubts, and stand up to them today.
Any final?
are you going to be doing 100 anytime soon? I know you've got the 100K coming up, but what about 100 for you?
So I have a knowing inside of me that absolutely I'm going to do 100 miles. Like I'm going to do 100 miles. I don't know when that's going to be. When I called you yesterday and you were like, so, like, what do you think? And I was like, I feel really neutral. Now, that said, as of this morning, like
I queued up a YouTube video.
Yeah, dude, he cues up the Tahoe Rim video, and which is so funny because I was on the plane with the guy who made that video and then ran into him at 2:30 in the morning on the trail and then flew home with him last night and like sat across from him. It's so funny. Like, so you queue up that video this morning and then, you know, I get that feeling of like, oh my God, I just want to go back. I'm going to put my name in the lottery and But the fact is that the lottery opens in December. So we'll just see what that looks like. Oh, I will say that one of the things that this race logistically is, it's so easy. We stayed at the Marriott in Carson City, which is like a quarter mile to the road that you take over the pass. Spooner Lake, which is the start and finish, we're 20 minutes away. And then Diamond Peak, which was the 50 mark and the 80 mark, were 35 minutes away. George Ruiz, who's the race director, has every single I dotted and T crossed from the point where he doesn't want you crossing a busy road that goes around the lake. So they have shuttles from the parking lot to the race site, which it's like maybe a half a mile, you know, and every single thing that you could imagine this race director has covered. The course is so well marked, and the ease of flying into Reno, it was a half an hour drive to the hotel. And then we just used the car. The car was $150 for the weekend. Like, it just, the logistics of this race are super, super easy. The flow of the race, the clarity from the race director as far as like where you could be as crew and support, you know, as pacers. And if he didn't want you somewhere, basically the rule is if it's reported that people are there, the runner gets disqualified. So, I mean, it's just so clear on every point. So logistically, like if I'm going to put it on paper, this race makes a lot of sense for us because it's super easy. So we'll just see how I feel when it opens. I've got a few things in my body that I want to get on top of. So I've had some lingering things, some plantar fascia in my left foot. So coming off of this weekend and seeing what it takes to do 100 and really feeling that and moving into 100K, I've got some things physically that I want to put into a higher level of healing. I could make it through, but I don't want to manage things in my body because I want to be doing this for a long time. So I'm interested in healing and getting to the other side of those. And then we'll see. So I think 100%, 100 miles that's what I feel inside that I'm going to do it. And when the time is right and the race is right, I'll know without a doubt.
Great. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And thanks, babe, for letting me have these little adventures
Always.
that I get to do. BJ has always been really good at allowing me to fly. And that's just...
I don't know how much allowing is done.
What do you mean by that?
You're just going to do it.